I was already holding the envelope when my daughter called and said, "Just send it today, Mom." He signed the note with a smiley face, right under the amount he expected me to transfer. I had 5 minutes before calling my lawyer, and my daughter had no idea what I just found. The wedding photos showed 100 guests, and not a single one of them was me. I wasn't supposed to see those pictures, but once I did, I couldn't unsee anything. She said it was small and intimate. But the guest list said otherwise. At 8:42 a.m., I opened my spreadsheet and realized I'd been funding a lie for 3 years. He asked for $12,000 like it was nothing, and that's when I finally stopped pretending. The moment she said I'd ruin the wedding, something in me went completely quiet. I was already holding the envelope when my daughter called and said, "Just send it today, Mom." Like I'd agreed to something I didn't remember agreeing to, and I caught myself staring at the little smiley face drawn under the amount before answering, trying to figure out why that detail bothered me more than the number itself. Because $12,000 shouldn't look casual on paper. Not like that. Not with a pen that had probably been sitting on their kitchen counter next to unpaid bills. And I could hear traffic through her phone like she was outside, pacing, waiting for me to say yes the way I always did. And for a second, I almost said it just to end the conversation, just to stop the pressure building in my chest. But instead, I asked her what it was for, and there was a pause. A small one, but long enough that I noticed it. Long enough that something in me shifted, and she said it was just a short-term thing. Which wasn't an answer, not really. And I found myself looking past the envelope out into the backyard at the oak tree. The one that's been there longer than her marriage. Longer than most of the choices she's made lately. And I realized I couldn't remember the last time she'd asked me for money and actually explained why. Not clearly. Not without rushing past it. And that thought didn't sit right. Not after everything. Not after the deposit 3 years ago, the car repairs. The opportunity she swore would change things. Because nothing ever seemed to change. Just the reasons. Just the urgency, always urgent, always today, always now. And I told her I needed a minute, and she exhaled like I'd disappointed her already, like hesitation itself was a problem. And when we hung up, I didn't move for a while, just stood there with the envelope in my hand, feeling the weight of it like it meant more than paper, like it carried something I hadn't fully named yet. And that's when I noticed the date written in the corner. Yesterday's date, which meant he'd written it before dropping it off, before even asking me directly. Like the outcome was already decided. Like my role in this was already understood. And I turned it over slowly, running my finger along the sealed edge, wondering why it hadn't been left open if it was so simple. And I don't know what made me hesitate. Maybe the tone of her voice. Maybe the way she didn't answer the question. Maybe the fact that I suddenly felt like I was being moved instead of asked. But I set the envelope down on the counter without opening it and walked to the sink, turning on the faucet just to hear something steady. Something predictable. And I stood there watching the water run longer than necessary, thinking about the last time I'd said no to her and realizing I couldn't actually remember when that was, which felt strange, because I'm not someone who avoids saying no, not in the rest of my life, just here, just with her. And that's when something small but sharp settled in my chest, not anger, not yet, just awareness, the kind that makes everything else go quiet. And I reached for my phone again, not to call her back, but to open the Notes app where I keep track of things I don't want to forget. And as I scrolled, I felt that same uneasy feeling grow because the list was longer than I expected, longer than I'd let myself think about. And right as I started connecting pieces I hadn't connected before, my phone lit up again with her name, calling a second time, faster than felt normal, like she couldn't wait, like something about this had a clock on it. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't reach to answer. I didn't answer her call. I was too busy deciding if I was done being her safety net. I watched her name light up my screen again and let it ring until it stopped. My hand hovering just above the phone like answering it might lock me into something I wasn't ready to agree to. And when the silence came back, it felt heavier than before, like I'd missed a step in a conversation I didn't fully understand yet. So instead of calling her back, I went to my laptop and opened the spreadsheet I hadn't looked at in months. The one I told myself I didn't need anymore because things were getting better. Except they weren't. And the numbers proved it immediately. Dates lined up in a way that didn't feel random anymore. Clusters of requests coming closer together over time. Amounts getting larger. Explanations getting shorter. And I felt that same tightness in my chest as I scrolled, because I started recognizing patterns I'd ignored before, like how every short-term need somehow overlapped with the last one, like they were never actually catching up, just stacking. And that's when I noticed something new, something I hadn't paid attention to before. The timing of the larger transfers lining up almost perfectly with dates. I didn't remember agreeing to anything at all, no calls, no real conversations, just quick messages, urgency, pressure, and then silence after the money was sent. And I sat back slowly, trying to replay those moments in my head, trying to remember if I'd asked enough questions. And the answer came too fast. I hadn't, not once. And before I could go any further, my phone buzzed again, this time not a call but a message from him, polite, controlled. Just checking in today would really help us out. And something about the wording made my stomach drop, because it didn't sound like a request. It sounded like a follow-up on something already decided, and I felt that shift again, stronger this time, like I was stepping outside of something I'd been standing in for too long. So I clicked back to the spreadsheet and started opening the notes attached to each entry, reading the exact words they'd used. And that's when I saw it, not in one place but across several entries, small phrases I'd brushed past before. We'll pay you back. Just until next month. Temporary loan. And I froze, because I suddenly realized those words mattered in a way I hadn't let them matter before. And as that thought settled in, my phone buzzed again, another message from him, shorter this time. We're on a deadline. And I didn't respond. I couldn't, because something else had already taken my attention. Something sitting in my email inbox that I hadn't opened yet. A notification from earlier that day with my daughter's name attached to it. And I clicked it without thinking, expecting something simple, maybe a receipt or a shared document. But what opened instead was a forwarded confirmation email, partial, cut off at the top, like it hadn't been meant for me to see the full context. And I leaned in closer to the screen, scanning the visible lines, my eyes catching on words that didn't make sense at first. Final payment received. Balance cleared. And then the number, larger than anything they'd ever asked me for directly. And my heart started beating faster because the date on that email was yesterday. The same date on the envelope sitting on my counter, which meant whatever they needed $12,000 for today wasn't what they'd already spent money on yesterday. And I felt the room go very still around me as that realization settled in. Because for the first time, it wasn't just about them needing help. It was about something not adding up, something being left out on purpose. And right as I reached for my phone to finally call her back, it started ringing again in my hand, her name flashing across the screen for the fourth time. And this time when I answered, I didn't say hello. I just asked one question, quietly, carefully. What did you already pay for yesterday? And the silence on the other end lasted just a little too long before she said, Mom, how do you know about that? She didn't answer right away, and that pause told me everything I needed to know so I didn't fill it. I just stood there gripping the edge of the counter, listening to her breathe like she was choosing which version of the truth I deserved. And when she finally spoke, it came out rushed, something about a venue deposit, about locking in a date before prices went up. But I already knew the venue. I had seen it in the photos. I was never supposed to see the vineyard 40 minutes outside the city string lights long. Tables, white flowers, she couldn't afford 100 guests. And somehow not me. I closed my eyes, and everything started lining up: the email confirmation, the amount, the date on the envelope, the urgency in her voice, now versus the calm certainty earlier. And then it clicked: yesterday's payment wasn't for something new, it was covering something old, something already slipping. And the 12,000 she was asking for now wasn't for a plan, it was for damage control. I asked her why she needed more money if the balance had already been cleared. And that's when her tone changed, sharp, defensive like. I had stepped into a version of the story I wasn't supposed to see. She said it was complicated, which wasn't an answer. And before I could respond, I heard his voice in the background, low but clear enough, asking who she was talking to, then quieter, don't tell her that. And something inside me went completely still. Because suddenly, this wasn't just messy, it was deliberate. I said his name, out loud, not loud, just enough that she knew I had heard him, and everything went quiet for a second before she came back, her voice lower, controlled, explaining. They had used a credit line to cover part of the wedding, that they were bridging it until things stabilized. And I felt something lock into place, because I had seen this before, not in words, but in patterns: one payment covering the last, nothing actually fixed. Just delayed. I asked her how much they owed total, not just today, and she hesitated longer this time. And when she finally said the number, it didn't sound real, it sounded like something she hadn't even let herself say out loud. And I had to sit down, because suddenly the money I had given them wasn't help, it was part of the system that kept this going. And all at once, I understood they hadn't just been asking me for money, they had been using me to stay ahead of something that was already collapsing. And she started talking faster, now trying to pull me back. In saying this was exactly why they needed the 12,000 today, that if they missed this, it would snowball. Her word, not mine. And I could hear the panic, now real panic, not the practiced urgency I was used to, and for a second, I almost gave in, because she was my daughter, and she was scared. But then I looked at the envelope still sitting unopened on the counter, and something in me held something that hadn't been there before. And I asked her one question, the only one that mattered now. Were you ever going to invite me? Or was I just paying for it? And the silence on the other end was longer than anything before it, heavy, final. And that was when I knew, because she didn't say no, she didn't even try to say no. She just started crying, and I felt my throat tighten. But my voice stayed steady when I told her I wasn't sending the money, not today, not like this. And when she spoke again, it wasn't panic anymore, it was anger, sharp, immediate, telling me I didn't understand, that I was ruining everything, that this is what parents are supposed to do. And I listened, really listened, and realized. She believed that completely, and that was the part that unsettled me the most, not the debt, not the lies, but the certainty. And when the call ended, the house went quiet in a way that felt different, final, like something had shifted that wouldn't shift back. And I sat there staring at the envelope. And for the first time, I didn't see a request. I saw a pattern I had been feeding for years. And I always thought I was helping her build a life. But the truth was a lot harder to sit with. I wasn't saving her, I was. The reason she never had to tell the truth.